The second thing that's happening in John Tyler's presidency that is going to be exacerbating the conflict between slaveholders and the anti-slavery movement is the question of the annexation of Texas. So Texas is a republic, an independent republic from 1836 into 1845. Well, really 1846. About 10 years, it's an independent republic. Once it had gained independence in 1836, there are all of these Americans who are trying to migrate into Texas, and the population is skyrocketing from these American immigrants, and it goes up 175,000 people in 10 years, mainly because of that, a lot of it because of that immigration. And by 1845, you got 125,000 people living in Texas, and of course, a lot of them are bringing slaves with them. So Texas becomes increasingly, the economy of Texas becomes increasingly tied to slavery, all right? And increasingly it's entrenched in Texas society as well, right? Now the British are doing trade with Texas. They're buying cotton from these new farmers who are coming into Texas, right? Okay, now the British are interested in keeping Texas independent, because the United States there is within the United States a very aggressive party, the Democrats, who want to push west and who want to really push the British out of North America entirely. Now, the British are still in Canada, right? That's still a part of the British Empire, but they're also, we're sharing the territory of Oregon with them at this point, okay? And there's some people within the United States in the Democrat Party who would like to push the British out entirely. So having Texas there as a sort of a separate nation is helpful for the British because it's, kind of something that, that the United States doesn't control directly. Okay. But the other thing the British want to do with Texas, they really want to push the Texans to abolish slavery. Remember, the British, as we talked about with the Amistad case, are really at the forefront of pushing for the abolishment of slavery everywhere in the world in the 19th century, including with those in Texas, okay? Yeah, of course, they want to continue, the Texans to continue to make cotton and sell it to Britain, but they want them to do it without using slave labor, right? All right. So, what John Tyler decides to do, he decides he's going to push for the annexation of Texas, and that is going to be the centerpiece of his re-election campaign for 1844, because he thinks, oh, look, this is going to be great. The people in the United States are already angry at the British, just in general, but then also because of the whole Amistad thing, you have the slaveholding interest that's really annoyed with the British because they're promoting the abolition movement in the United States, and everybody's gonna be like, get on board with John Tyler if he annexes Texas. So he makes that like a Senate thing that he wants to do. And of course, all of the abolitionists see this as just an excuse to expand slavery westward and expand slavery within the United States. And Daniel Webster, who is from the North, does not support annexation for this reason, because he sees it as a way of expanding slavery in the United States. And so he resigns as Secretary of State. And Tyler, remember, he's a Whig, and he puts in the position of Secretary of State a radical pro-slavery Secretary of State. That guy dies in a horrible accident when a U.S. battleship blows up accidentally, okay? And then he puts in like the leader of kind of the pro-slavery faction, the most senior politician among them, John C. Calhoun, into the position of Secretary of State. So John C. Calhoun was a guy who originally, right, had been a national Republican, supported national Republicanism of John Quincy Adams, and then he had increasingly come to support states' rights, so he'd really broken with the national Republicans, and then he had led that movement of South Carolina, that when South Carolina nearly seceded over the tariff because the slaveholding owners didn't want to pay for import. They didn't want to pay a tax on imports, okay? Because they were providing the raw material for those imports. That was going to hurt their business indirectly, because the British were going to sell less imports, and they were going to buy less cotton, therefore. So the whole thing was, but anyway, Calhoun was leading that whole thing in South Carolina. Well, now he's Secretary of State for the Whig Party. This just shows you how divided the Whig Party is. There are these sort of irreconcilable differences within the Whig Party. You have the abolitionists who have to work with the Whigs. You have these kind of moderate people who don't like slavery, who aren't slave owners, who want it to sort of gradually phase out. And you have these really, really rich planters who are Whigs because they support the promotion of a stable currency. They support the improvement of infrastructure so they can ship cotton across the country more easily. So they're Whigs, but they're pro-slavery. So you have all these these irreconcilable differences within the Whig Party over slavery. And Calhoun is now sort of in this position in the president's administration, and he's pushing for the annexation of Texas, and of course the expansion of slavery within the United States by bringing Texas into the Union. Okay. He is negotiating with the Texans for some kind of treaty. They come up with a treaty in 1844, okay? And then it's sent to the Senate, because the Senate has to ratify the treaty. And this is in April of 1844, all right? The Senate, of course, has a lot of people who are anti-slavery in it, and they oppose the treaty. The treaty does not pass in the Senate, all right? And in the newspapers, this whole thing blows up now because it was kind of not out in the open. And now it looks like Tyler, he's working to expand slavery. This is not good for the Whig Party, okay? And what's going to happen is that in the election of 1844, the Democrats are going to take up the cause of annexation of Texas and westward expansion, and Tyler is basically going to implode and collapse as a candidate, okay?